Good evening, this is Dark Sage Walker, and I think it's time to try a Lilith run. I went out of my way to do an Azazel Greed Mode run, big shock. So, now it's time to try out Lilith. So, what makes Lilith so much different from any other character? Well, for one, she starts with Cambion Conception. That just means that as she takes damage, she'll basically create demonic familiars. Okay, that's all well and good, but that's not her biggest defining point. Her biggest defining point is that she cannot fire normal tears. So, in her stead, she's got her little incubus friend, who will do all the tear firing for her. Now, this doesn't sound like it's a big change to the formula, but it is a good deal trickier to aim a familiar than it is to just fire tears. And it is potentially something that could be problematic if sorry, got something stuck in my throat. It is something that could potentially be problematic if you would just don't either A, have the coordination, or B, just make a mistake in your judgment and figure out, oh, the enemy's over there, I should be aiming over there. You know, it's little things like that that can make a difference. No, I don't want the hourglass, thank you very much. Box of Friends is already plenty good. So, I started off immediately seeming very down on Lilith, but... okay, I think that's a little awkward, let's get rid of that. But now, here's the second act twist. I actually rather like this character. Okay, I need more firepower. So that's what Box of Friends does, and you can unlock that for use on other characters if you're having a strong familiar-based run. Lilith has it all the time. Basically, every 4 room you can double your firepower. There you go, and die. Now, the strength of that item depends very heavily on what familiars you have. If you have something that doesn't benefit from having multiple familiars, say you have, oh, I don't know, Dark Bum, where having multiple Dark Bums is actually a huge issue, well, then you're probably not going to benefit much from that. That works. On the other hand, if you have, say, this little dude here, and you have multiple incubus firing your same tier effects over and over again, well, that's pretty significant. You're probably going to want more than one of those. You got little brimstone, you're going to want more than one of those. You got rotten baby, well, you definitely want more than one of those. So, Box of Friends is a good item, situational. If you have, you know, multiple brother Bobbies or something like that, not as useful then. There we go. Oh, I only have 1 bomb. I can't even... oh, well. Larry Jr. it is. Let's go. Okay, nice. Go away. Oh, hey, Peeper's actually being a bit more helpful than I thought he was going to be. Or it. I guess I can't really say an eyeball has a gender. I did not just assume the gender of an eyeball, I just assumed it probably doesn't have a gender. You know, after thinking about it a bit more carefully. There we go. Okay, so here's one of the tricky things about Incubus, is that things like shot speed don't actually have an effect with Incubus. So, some stats have an effect with Incubus, some don't. I want to say that range doesn't have a huge effect with Incubus either. I could be wrong about that. So, some things with Lilith just don't have as strong of an effect. That is a lot of red hearts. What in the world? Oh, are you serious right now? Okay, well, this is not good. Okay, that's better. Well, this is going to be an odd run. And I'm going to the next floor, not really feeling any stronger. Well, I was hoping to get Hush out of the way, but as is, the chances of that are not great. This could be worth it. Maybe I'll come back after I have my box of friends charged up. I guess that's not a complete wash. I do have Lump of Coal. Nice. Thanks, asshole. That was great. Perfect. I love being rammed into by little pieces of corn-covered poop. This is going to be an awkward one. I was kind of hoping that one of the first items I would get would at least be decent, but of course. Alright, things are actually kind of starting to look down a little bit. As I said, the shift in playstyle with Lilith is a minor one, but for some people it can make all the difference. I personally think Lilith is fine, but I understand. This can be a difficult character to use, and having to base almost all your damage around familiars, that can get a little cumbersome. Really trying hard not to lose my special room chant, but you know, sometimes things don't go the way we think they will. I am honestly surprised I dodged that shit. Suck it on down, boy. Here, now I have enough bombs to actually begin healthy exploration for things. And I see no reason not to get this. Even though it wasn't really that helpful, but oh well. No. Hey, remember what I said about random sprays of crap? Don't set me off on that path again. There we go. Odd mushroom. Well, you see, part of the problem I'm having with that prospect is that I'm not sure how much I like the idea of losing out on my damage. There we go. So, I'm going to wait with Odd Mushroom to see if I can pick up something that boosts my damage a bit first. If I can find something that will give me a bit of a damage boost to offset that, and yes, I know I have Lump of Coal, I'm just not sure if it's that worthwhile to trade in yet. There we go. There we go. Alright, not so bad. Oh, you fucking kidding me. Hey, it doesn't matter now. Yes, right. Oh, God, I hate Gurdy Jr. Oh, okay. Well, like I said, shot speed doesn't make a big difference, but now I'm pretty safe to take Odd Mushroom. The fire rate improvement will actually probably do me more good than not now. There we go. Oh, and it's a speed increase. Well, hold on. I remember it wasn't a speed increase not too long ago. That must have been an updated item. Dude, kick fucking ass! Life is pretty good sometimes. Even though I missed out on a potential devil deal. So between lump of coal and what is it, cat o' nine tails. Actually, this is very much an overall benefit. No. Guess I shouldn't complain so much. High Priestess. Okay. Well, that was a waste of money. Not that the High Priestess card is bad or anything. Far from it. Just, I'd rather have the Devil card. So, here's an interesting question for all of you out there. What is your favorite, more or less broken game out there? And by broken, I mean, like, not necessarily that it doesn't work or that there's something really unfair in the tactics. I mean, like, literally a game that's I guess I do mean a game that doesn't necessarily work. At least not in the way it's intended to. This could be anything from, like, just something a little glitchy, or, you know, just a game that flat out doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I would be hard-pressed to find anyone who would answer with Ride to Hell Retribution. That is not what I was going to answer, it's not what you should answer. Honestly, if one of your favorite games of all time is Ride to Hell Retribution, maybe it's time to get a CAT scan. Just saying, you probably went through a traumatic event as a child, and now you need to have your brain examined to make sure that you're still a functioning human being. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. There we go. Ugh, this room is a little stressful. But in this case, the reason I bring it up is because I was just thinking about that very thing myself the other day. And much of today, honestly. And there is a game that it was pushed out a little early, perhaps. And it's a little glitchy, I will openly admit, but I can't help but thinking it is one of my favorite games of all time. And the reason isn't necessarily because of its glitchy nature, but because the game has heart and soul behind it. It's well more than you can say for a lot of games that come out nowadays. I know I'm missing a Boney, where are you? Get over here, fucker. Yeah, that's what I thought. And I am referring, of course, to the Super Nintendo RPG Secret of Mana. Now, some of you may be familiar with this game. Many of you probably won't be. Not a lot of us Super Nintendo babies out there anymore. So, okay, more bombs. So, for those of you who don't necessarily know, allow me to fill you in. Secret of Mana is essentially a top-down action RPG released for the SNES in, I want to say, 1993? I could be wrong about that. It was developed by Square Enix, who at the time was just called Squaresoft. It's another thing I imagine a lot of people probably don't know. It wasn't always Square Enix, it used to be Squaresoft. So, very much in keeping with the Legend of Zelda, what you had with Secret of Mana was a top-down perspective where you would take sword, spear, and all sorts of other weaponry to enemies, and work your way through the game's narrative in that structure. So, why do I say that the game is broken? Well, a few little glitches, a few little niggles in the game's design. There is the idea that it's possible to run into certain bugs that make it difficult to progress, like the one that makes it so that if you use a grapple point at the wrong spot, you'll glitch into the wall and never ever be able to move again. That's known as a soft lock. So for those of you who aren't savvy on the idea, I apparently unlocked something cute. I don't know about you, but that looked horrifying. Something good? That's pretty good. Oh, really? This is working out. I don't want Bob's Rotten Head, though. Don't necessarily want the key pieces either. Not on this run. I don't want to go all the way back to the shop, so we'll just move on. In case you're wondering how I know about the grapple point glitch, let's just say I may have some first-hand experience with that one. Oh, son of a bitch. Alright, that's gonna make things more difficult than they need to be. At least these guys aren't super jumpers. Fuck that shit. But whereas the game may not necessarily be a 100% stable piece of work, it makes up for it just in the idea that the game is it's so bloody good in other areas. Let me say, it's very difficult to find games that are made just with heart nowadays. The Secret of Mana has that going for it in spades, from the music to the characters. To this day, speaking of the music, to this day, when I play D&D games, I'll still use Secret of Mana's boss fight music to emphasize an important fight in a D&D game. That's just how much that music means to me. Well, gotta pick up this crappy item at some point. So I'm starting to get the feeling that this probably won't end up being a Hush-worthy run. Not unless I pick up something really good pretty soon here. The enemies were very interesting. I'm not sure if I would use the word iconic, but they were memorable. I think what really puts the game over the top, as far as I'm concerned, though, is definitely the settings, the music. It was a very gorgeously put together game. Okay, this might seem stupid, but I'm gonna need the soul hearts, so thank you. By the way, if you want to know what Backstabber does, well, real honestly, your guess is as good as mine. I know it occasionally puts the bleeding effect on an enemy, and the moment I know what exactly that does, I'll get back to you. And another reason I bring up Secret of Mana is because it was one of the few multiplayer RPGs out there that I think actually got the concept right. It wasn't necessarily an RPG. It wasn't necessarily a multiplayer game with a story tacked on. It was a story-driven game first, and then it had multiplayer elements. And of course I'll go out. Of course I remember the main characters. There is the spiky-haired protagonist named Randy. I definitely want this. There's the sprite, who I believe was named Popoy. And then your female friend, who was named Prim. Now, these characters did not have actual preset names in the original version of the game. Thus, oh, I already used crap. Okay, I'm just wasting time at this point. But that should give you a pretty good insight as to how much I remember these characters. They didn't even have set names, but I remember their set names. The story was, it was there. It was your basic plot, really. It was nothing like super spectacular or crazy, but nothing that you'd necessarily shake a stick at either. It was enough to get you invested in the plot. What it did do is it got detailed and kept going. There was always something going on of intrigue, and it was always enough to keep you moving. And that's what I appreciate the most about that game, is that it really went out of its way to invest players in the world. Now, part of the reason why I bring up Secret of Mana, apropos of nothing, is because I know that there is a remake of the game that recently came out that was, to put it charitably, a disservice to the original game. Not necessarily bad, just not necessarily good either. It was an experience that should have been great. Matter of fact, I even plugged it on my Facebook page at one point or another. Sorry. Okay, getting upset now. Now, one of the things that the remake did to try to essentially reinvent itself. Okay, maybe range does do something. Is that it used 3D sprites instead of 2D pixel art. Which, you know, fine. We all were looking for a bit of an update to the game, so the least they could do is update the game's appearance. But it had the unintended consequence of just making the game feel, okay, fuck off, guys. You're starting to make me mad now. It had the unintended consequence of making the game just feel a little token. What it gained in graphical fidelity, it sort of lost something in heart and charm. The characters just didn't really feel as much like characters as they did just, you know, stock. Especially a shame, since I think the characters in the original had all the charm that they needed. And an even bigger shame, because one of the things that the characters got in the remake was voices. That's right, they brought voice acting into the mix, and somehow that fucked things up. Like, I'm not entirely sure how you can do that. You go out of your way to try to give your characters a distinct personality and voice, and somehow you fail to give them more personality. It's very strange. By the way, the Callus trinket makes it so that you don't take damage from floor-based traps, so no more damage from creep, no more damage from spikes, so long as I'm holding this. It's a very good win-win, if you ask me. I figure I'm not getting anywhere quickly, I may as well spend some time rolling the slot machine and see if I can get anything good. I'm only going to go down so far, though, because I still want some money left for the shop. That's gonna help. Nice. I think the biggest problem is that just for the characters lacked any sort of real interesting dialogue. Or rather, what it was is that a lot of them were just kind of one notes. And it's a real shame that, because there's a lot going on in that game that I think is deserving of some credit, but... And when I say that, I namely mean the idea that they were willing to try. But like with most modern AAA game developers nowadays, they cut out the thing that mattered the most. And who knows? Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill with this. Maybe other people thought the game was, better than I did. And that's the default. Beautiful. And that's Bob's brain. That's far less beautiful, and I don't want to be a part of it. I also just noticed that I spawned the leech. Not sure how helpful that'll be, but at least it's not part of the familiar chain. Nice. That's what I was looking for. Oh, would you stop? Eh. There we go. So, just as a thought, when you go to give characters that didn't necessarily have a voice, just one personality trait that they cling to over and over again, like kind of like or come back to, I should say, over and over again, like a broken record, it doesn't actually do much to endear the character. Or really, fucker, really? Fuck you, invisible ass. It doesn't do much to actually inspire any positive feeling. It's just, there. It's nothing that anyone's going to remember. It's nothing that really is deserving of praise or thoughts. It's just, there. So if you want your characters to remain icons in this dying AAA sector, you have to put in some time and actually make them fully realized characters and not just caricatures of a character. Characters need to have 3 dimensions. They need to have something going for them other than just a single note character trait. You can't expect to inspire feelings in your players if your characters are bland, one note, not really deserving of a whole lot of anything. Well, I would rather have the dim bulb, because I'm not going to spend all of my time not using my box of friends. Are you crazy? Oh, come on. 72% chance out of room, nothing. Well, thanks, game. So hopefully in the near future, when Nintendo realizes what they have on their hands and they decide they finally need to give Link a voice, hopefully they do a good job at giving him the right voice and the proper personality. Because if they do, if in their inevitable follow-up to Breath of the Wild, if the voice of Link is, well, it's not even necessarily his voice that's the issue, but his behaviors. If his behaviors are very, not Link-like, that's going to end up being a big problem. which is probably why they've refused to give the character a voice. Or rather, they refused to give him dialogue. And you can see their point. If they have something that's working out for them, why jeopardize it? But at some point or another, they're probably going to want to at least experiment with the idea. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. Maybe at this point, Link does deserve an actual voice. But the other argument one could make against that idea is that when Link was originally designed, it was Shigeru Miyamoto's idea to have the character of Link be the quote-unquote link between the player and the character in the world. So there's a fairly good chance that Link may never necessarily be a speaker, because for the most part, Link is supposed to be us. It's kind of like the same role that Chrono has in Chrono Trigger. Here's another reference that a lot of people probably don't get nowadays. And that's a shame, because in my time, I know I sound like the internet's grandpa again. You couldn't go anywhere without someone mentioning how great they thought Chrono Trigger was. It was like the Final Fantasy VII or the Ocarina of Time of that particular era. That game was everywhere. It was almost omnipresent, and you know what? It was great. But right now, the whole point is ranting about Secret of Mana, not Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger can wait for another day. Besides, there are plenty of people out there who have already said the same things that I would say about Chrono Trigger in a way better way. If you're interested, go check out Pro Jared's YouTube channel, and yes, I know I'm promoting a much bigger YouTube channel than mine. But I think Pro Jared says the exact same things that I would say about Chrono Trigger, and, well, frankly, I don't think he's wrong. So if you want to hear more about Chrono Trigger, go check out his video. He knows what he's talking about. Another thing that was actually butchered in the Secret of Mana remake was, and I can't believe I have to say this, the music. The music in the original Secret of Mana was one of the high points. The soundtrack was kicking. I'm gonna say the original composer, Hiroki Kikuta, definitely knew what he was doing when he was making that music. Every song in the game is just a piece of work. Like I said, I still use the boss battle song and to this day to emphasize important fights in my D&D campaigns. But it's worth pointing out that that was close. It's worth pointing out that the music that you get in town is suitably calm and pleasant. The music that you get in the wilderness invokes a sense of mystery and awe. The soundtrack knocks it out of the park, and it's one of gaming's best soundtracks. So, how do they follow that up for the Secret of Mana remake? Yeah, the music is there. It's definitely not anything that anyone's going to go out of their way to download or anything. It leaves me with this feeling of, how did you do that? How? You had the template to make beautiful music. It was practically gift wrapped for you, and you somehow messed it up. Oh, really, Bloat? You have to come in while I'm ranting about Secret of Mana? Sure. What the hell? I just find it to be such a shame that whereas the music wasn't bad, it made an even greater sin of just being forgettable. And that is the last thing that the music in Secret of Mana ever was forgettable. That soundtrack and I go back. And it's just a shame that they managed to take it and make it so bland. Like, I didn't even think that was possible. More proof that the big AAA publishers really don't know what gamers want. Oh yeah, they'll totally be down for this soulless rendition of one of our classic properties. They'll dig it totally. Out of touch is a word that I could use for it. And so is fucking retarded, but that's 2 words. Keep myself to the format that I promised myself I would use. Keep in mind that this is Square Enix, the same company that goes out of their way to make these over-bloated examples of Final Fantasy games. And I know that not every Final Fantasy game is supposed to have the same gameplay, but when you change practically nothing from Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy VII, why do you think that we suddenly want every game to be basically not that? You turned Final Fantasy VIII into essentially micromanagement the video game. Final Fantasy IX was good. That went back to old school. Final Fantasy X was more cinematic, but once again, it had strong characters, and the way that the characters got stronger was different, but still similar enough in its form and execution that I could honestly look at it and go, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the Final Fantasy game if ever I've seen one. Now, where people really started to jump off the Final Fantasy boat was at Final Fantasy XII, which I think is doing that game a huge disservice. I thought Final Fantasy XII was pretty good. Part of that could be that... Interesting. Part of that could be the idea that there were just a lot of Final Fantasy VI references in Final Fantasy XII. You son of a bitch. Oh well, not against that damage up. Ugh, of course. Oh hey, it spawned a little Brim. Alright, well, color me intrigued. You know what, Greed? Super Greed. Motherfucker Greed, if you will. I don't think I like your face. So we've now gone from talking about Secret of Mana to Final Fantasy, but that's okay. At least in this respect, it's all because it's related to the same company. Good old Squeenix. Back to the topic of Final Fantasy XII. One thing that's really put people off is that instead of it being just the old ATB system like it was in basically 4 through 9, they decided to go with this sort of like real-time encounter system, which threw a lot of people for a loop, but I don't know, I liked it. The thing that most people didn't like was how the game started to feel so much more automated with the Gambit system. And some people were fine with the gambit system, other people, like I said, thought it railroaded the game too much. My roommate and best buddy was one of those people that felt that it railroaded the game too much. Thing is, I don't even necessarily disagree with them, but there's an easy fix to that. Hi, Lulu. How you doing, pal? There's an easy fix to that. Don't use the gambits. It actually makes the game a good deal more interesting and challenging to just not use the gambits. It slows down the gameplay considerably, but for most people, I think this will not be an issue. Serpent's Kiss, beautiful. And up at troll bombs. Spiders is not any better. Okay, you have my attention. Alright, Mom's Knife. Mom's Knife is a little awkward to use on Incubus, and now I have to be definitely a good deal more careful where Incubus is, because now I've got that knife to work with. But overall, I say it's still an upgrade from basic shots. Ah, son of a... Bird, what are you doing? You are very much confusing me. Have I mentioned that I very much dislike this enemy? Because, yeah, I very much dislike this enemy. It also puts my health in a far more precarious spot than it was a moment ago. There we go. Looking better. Oh, get away from me. And also, fuck you, by the way. You know, come to think of it, I probably should have used my box of friends, give myself a little bit more firepower. Hey, sure would be nice to, you know, get something useful. I mean, that would have been more useful before I picked up Mom's Knife, honestly. It's kind of what I was hoping that two-heart deal was. Shard of Glass. Okay, don't care. Look, I can unlock the Forgotten 3 times! Hashtag do not take seriously. God, rooms in the dark room are so much more difficult than I remember them being. And there, I can concentrate again. So, if it's been a while since you've revisited Final Fantasy XII, and I know it has been for me, one thing to give a try might just be to try playing the game without turning on gambits. Some people will say that the game wasn't intended to be played like that, I would say there's a lot of games out there that weren't intended to be played the way people tend to play them. One could make the argument that no game has ever played the way speedrunners play them. Now, don't see a lot of people complaining about that. Come on, knives, do your job, do your job. No, fuck your monster's long shot. Get over here. Oh, Jesus. Ugh. There we go. I will not do a victory lap, thank you very much. One last thing to say about Secret of Mana. Oh, that's a great item. I know for a fact that there's a version of Secret of Mana in Japan that's for the Nintendo Switch. It's basically Secret of Mana and I believe it's called Seiken Densetsu 3, Secret of Mana 3, is together in one pack. Those are basically the two Super Nintendo games, and from what I've heard, as much as I love Secret of Mana, apparently Secret of Mana 3 is even better. But it was never localized. This seems criminal to me. It doesn't make sense. And as long as I have some time while I'm sitting here on the title screen, allow me to educate. When Secret of Mana came out in the West, what a lot of people didn't know is that it was actually Seiken Densetsu 2. So whatever happened to the first one? How come we never got the first Mana game? Well, actually, if you look back at a little-known game called Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy, that was it. It was later re-released on the Game Boy Advance as Sword of Mana. So find one of those two titles and you're playing the first Mana game. Then there's Secret of Mana. I have no idea what they would localize the third one to, but Secret of Mana 3. Then there's Legend of Mana, and Children of Mana can go die in a fire. That's my advice to you, so saith Darkseid Walker. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, favorite, subscribe, do all that fun shit. Help me get noticed on YouTube. In the meantime, I'll be seeing you.